We're right at noon, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I want to welcome everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Ohio River Basin Alliance discussion series. This is the first of this winter discussion series. ORBA, the Ohio River Basin Alliance, is a collaborative of stakeholders with a unified voice for the Ohio River Basin. It consists of 14 states and over 500 members working to sustain healthy ecosystems and vibrant communities in the basin. I'd like to thank our current chair of ORBA, it's Chris Lorenz with Thomas More University, and our past chair, Craig Butler, with the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District. I want to thank our sponsors of the webinar series listed here on this first slide. We have Orsenco for Kentucky Association for Environmental Education, our West Virginia Rivers, Ohio University's Voinovich School, and Thomas More University. And I also want to thank our Ohio River Basin Working Group, KID Working Group. This is the Knowledge and Education to Inform Decisions. This is the working group that I lead as my role with ORBA. And we have a dedicated group of people that have worked together to put this webinar series together that we run January, February, and March. That's Nick Callahan with Orsenco, Perry Thomas, who you'll hear today presenting with Kentucky Association of Environmental Education, Chuck Somerville, who's a Dean Emeritus from Marshall University, and he also leads the Ohio River Basin Consortium for Research and Education, which is part of our ORBA KID group. My name is Jen Bowman. I am the working group lead for ORBA's KID group, and I'm with Ohio University's Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Service. I want to turn over now the moderation for this webinar to Nick Callahan with Orsenco, as he will be the moderator for today's sessions and introduce our three speakers that have agreed to graciously share their time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. So real quick, just in case you're not familiar with Orsenco, Orsenco was created by 8 states and the federal government with the purpose of monitoring the Ohio River. So if you are ever curious about data or any projects happening on the river, you can go visit our website. And I'll put that in the chat here in just a few minutes. But you can view our latest data, learn about monitoring programs happening, and learn about and participate in our education and outreach programs that are held by our nonprofit partner, the Foundation for Ohio River Education. So, like she said, my name is Nick Callahan, and I'm the education coordinator for Orsenco. And I'll be moderating today's discussion on a glimpse into the heart of environmental education and the Ohio River Basin and beyond. So just for a couple of quick housekeeping rules, if you don't mind just keeping your microphone muted and disabling your camera for today, that'll just help this go nice and smoothly. And then if you have any questions, please submit those in the chat. You're also welcome to if you like, add in the chat your name and where you work. And also, just for our speakers, they had asked if you don't mind putting in the chat anything in the next upcoming year that you might be excited about in environmental education or conservation in general. And just as another note, this discussion will be recorded and I'll be posting the slides on the ORBA YouTube page after this, and we will be emailing the link to that out to everyone following this presentation. So we have a couple of winter webinar series coming up after today. So we have February 19th, which will be Water and Trees. And then March 26th, which will be Student Voices. And that'll be just going through some really awesome student research projects happening throughout the basin. So today's speakers will have Mary Bryden Miller. Unfortunately, Bronwyn Williams is sick and cannot attend today. However, luckily, he was going to be presenting with Mary, so we won't be missing out on that presentation. Ashley Hoffman and Perry Thomas. And for next month, we have Alicia, Luke, and Olivia, who will be our Water and Trees presenters. And as always, if you have any ideas for anything that you would like covered in the discussion series, please email Jen Bowman. So with that said, we'll go on ahead and introduce our first speaker, who is going to be presenting on Ripple Effects International, an opportunity for youth and their families to explore local waterways through photography and writing. And our speaker today is going to be Mary Bryden Miller, who is a PhD and professor at the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Louisville. She is a participatory action researcher who conducts work in schools, communities, and organizational settings. Her current work focuses on climate change education and on addressing the risk of flash flooding in Eastern Kentucky with the FLASH initiative. So I will go on ahead and stop sharing my screen. That way, Mary, you can go on ahead and take over.
There we go. Can you all see and hear now? Nick, I'm going to just
Yep,
authorize
looks
you
good.
to answer the question. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jen and Nick and Perry and everyone for inviting us along. As Nick mentioned, Bronwyn Williams, who is both my colleague on this project and presentation and my husband, came down with the flu. So he gives his apologies, but given the fact that we did this together, I think we're okay for the presentation this morning. So what about today is Ripple Effects. Ripple Effects Louisville and Ripple Effects International. And like true ripple effects, it sort of started at one point here in Louisville and is spreading out internationally now with different kinds of partnerships and initiatives. So I'm going to start by talking about what we've done here in Louisville over the past 5 years. Perry Thomas, who's going to be speaking next, has been involved in this with me all the way along, has David Wicks, who I saw is attending. So a shout out to him as well. So Ripple Effects is, as Nick kind of framed it in his introduction, is a photography contest that is designed for students from like kindergarten through 12th grade in the greater Kentuckiana area. So we include both sides of the river and the counties sort of surrounding Louisville. And the idea is to invite young people to go out and take photographs that represent some aspect of water in our community and the importance of water in our community. So it may be something that they value about water, some place that they really enjoy spending time. It might be a problem that they have encountered related to water in our community, or it might be something they see happening that's making a positive difference. So it's really up to them to frame that prompt in any way they want and take whichever pictures they want. We have, largely thanks to David Wicks, who is here, we have been able each year to raise money in order to provide prizes to kids who submit their photographs. We have different categories of kids. So we have K through first, third through fifth, middle schoolers and high schoolers, so that kids aren't competing, with young people at different ages. And we ask them to take a photograph and then also to write something about why that photograph, what was important about that photograph, what it means to them, and what that means about how they feel about water in their community. The picture that you see in the upper right-hand column is actually out at David's Boathouse, where we've been able to blow up some of the pictures and have them posted on the Boathouse. The people in that picture are not photograph people. Those are students that I work with at Marion C. Moore, who came out when David did one of his very famous canoe trips for us. So we had our picture taken out there. One of the other aspects that I think is really important about Ripple Effects is the breadth of community engagement that we have just pulled together and sustained over the 5 years that we've done this. And to me, that's really, it's what makes it really interesting and fun and gratifying to me because we have people from a number of local government agencies. We have people from the Metropolitan Sewer District and the Louisville Water Company, but we also have people like David's organization, the River City Paddle Sports and Afloat and the Kentucky Water Alliance and my university, Kentucky Association for Environmental Education. The public libraries have been very involved. So it has given us an opportunity to really reach across our community, the Louisville Photographic Society and the Photographic Biennial, all of whom have spent the past 5 years coming together each month to plan this and carry it off and host the awards ceremony, raise money in order to be able to do it. So to me, I find that really hopeful sort of sign about people being willing to come together, an issue that they feel is important. So there's part of it is getting the kids to stop and look carefully at nature and take these photographs and reflect on them. Part of it is communities coming together to support that. And part of it is then reaching out to the broader community, as we did with this picture in the middle down there with that odd creature. That's Mandy the salamander, who is the mascot for the Metropolitan Sewer District. But this was an exhibit that we did at the State Fair for a couple of years. So there's lots of aspects that I think are really exciting about ripple effects. This is just one example of one of our recent award winners from Jane about ducks. So this sort of gives you a sense of the kinds of photographs that we get. The people from the Photographic Society judge the photographs, and then sort of what Jane thought about it, that sort of how the lake helps local ducks to survive. So as we were thinking about ripple effects locally, I spent some time in Australia, and we were able to run a ripple effects project with the State Library in New South Wales when we were there. And then just recently, Bronwyn and I were asked to help launch a project in England. We're sort of trying to extend those ripples out internationally now to include other partners and other ways in which people sort of want to engage with this project. But if we think about the main goals that we have, you could kind of summarize them as helping young people to understand that climate change is both local and global, and to learn about the global through studying the local, trying to develop connections with others, and to develop empathy, to feel that we have agency, and particularly the idea of collective agency as a way of helping young people to feel less hopeless about the impacts of climate change and environmental issues, and more a sense of being able to come together to do something about it. A lot of the research seems to suggest that this notion of collective efficacy, being able to come together to make a change, is really important in helping people feel hopeful. And then finally, trying to sort of approach this through multimodal, multidisciplinary kinds of literacy practices. This picture, by the way, is from our partner school in South Africa. That's Leonard Marimbe, who is a wonderful educator there in Ruston, South Africa, and has been part of one of the projects we've been working on. So Ripple Effects International is, as I say, we're trying to develop a website where people who are running ripple effects projects anywhere in the world can get inspiration, find resources, and share their work with other communities around the world. So there's three key components to this. One is the photography, as we said. One is the written reflection that the participants put up, and then one is getting it out there in the public sphere, feeling like your work is being recognized by others in some way. A couple of years ago, we had the Festival of Face here in Louisville, and the program for the Festival of Face included some of the photographs. So, whether it's posting them in public places, as out at the boathouse, or it's being in the Festival of Face, or having your photographs appear on Ripple Effects International, we try to have various ways in which young people can present their photographs. And we're now working with, like I say, Morecambe Bay. If you're interested, email me and I can tell you more about the Morecambe Bay curriculum, because they're doing wonderful work up there in Northwest England. We have a university level partnership between Finland and South Africa. and then other people who've expressed an interest in a number of other countries. And these are just a few other kinds of environmental education projects that we've been involved with. We had a grant to bring together colleagues from South Africa, that's Leonard's group, Austria, South Africa, Austria, Australia, the Philippines, and here in Louisville. And we've been sharing ideas and strategies and classroom exercises like a do one thing tree, which is what that thing in the middle is, where kids and their families make a pledge to do something about climate change or environmental issues. We've exchanged letters, where I carried letters from the kids here in Louisville to South Africa and brought letters back with me that we had the kids sort of look at and read. We've done blog posts with each other. We've planted trees, graffiti walls. We've had a day of science here at the university where we bring middle schoolers to the university campus to do activities with researchers around environmental issues. Okay. Our colleagues in the Philippines have done a lot with robotics. People in Austria have done bee hotels. So we have lots and lots of different ways that we're trying to engage young people together in thinking about climate change. So I'll finish up there. I think I'm about at time. And I can turn it over to our next speaker. I think is going to be Perry.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I accidentally pulled up my wrong notes. So our next speaker is going to actually be Ashley Hoffman. So Ashley is going to be presenting on the environmental education continuum and a tool for landscape analysis. And Ashley Hoffman serves as the executive director of the Kentucky Association for Environmental Education, which is the backbone organization for environmental education in Kentucky. So thank you very much, Ashley. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nick. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about what environmental education is first, and then a little bit about who we are. And while I specifically work with Kentucky in the Southeast, there is a backbone organization in almost every state. So we're all doing similar work across every state, and I'm happy to connect folks with the groups in their own state if they would be interested in that. So environmental education is really built on the principles of sustainability. We focus on how we can coexist with our natural world. There was a report in 1987 called Our Common Future that states that to create a more sustainable society, we need to determine how to meet the needs of the present without compromising our ability to meet the needs of the future. And so that's really what we're doing in environmental education. We're focusing on how we can work on our environmental health and ecological integrity of our communities. And so all of that history here, I've just got, so the field itself kind of started in the 1970s, and I've got a short video clip I wanted to share real quick. Just 1 second though, because I forgot to click this. There we go. Got to optimize the sound. There we go.
Environmental education is incredibly varied in where and how it happens, but the foundation of the field can be traced back to a definition crafted at the very first international conference focused on environmental education. Bringing together leaders from 66 countries, it was held in Tbilisi, Georgia in 1977. Bonjour. The Tbilisi Declaration defines environmental education as a learning process that increases people's knowledge and awareness about the environment and its associated challenges, develops the necessary skills and expertise to address the challenges, and fosters attitudes, motivations, and commitments to make informed decisions and take responsible action. Now, there is a lot to unpack in this definition. First, EE is a learning process that is focused on lifelong learning, starting in the earliest years and continuing throughout our lives. It is about engaging individuals as well as communities and organizations. EE increases knowledge about the environment and the social and economic issues that influence both the health of the environment and our quality of life. It is about everything from natural resources like clean air and clean water to healthy food and healthy communities. With knowledge also comes awareness about threats to the environment, the decisions we make that lead to environmental degradation, and global challenges like climate change and overfishing. But knowing about or being aware of environmental issues and their impact on our quality of life isn't enough. We need skills to solve problems. EE empowers people by giving them the tools and practice to take informed action. It also influences attitudes, the values and assumptions underlying our behavior. Finally, EE motivates people to take action to protect our natural resources and create a more just and sustainable future for all. In short, environmental education has the power to transform lives and society. It is a critical tool in expanding the environmental movement and creating healthier and more civically engaged communities. Environmental education is
All right, so that just gives you a little bit, it's a complicated definition, so I like to break that down. But really what we're trying to share is that we have this continuum of environmental education. And so when we just share awareness and knowledge, we're giving information. And but what we really want to be true environmental education is for us not to, we know that just giving information doesn't change attitudes and behaviors. There's a lot more to it than that. And so what we really want is to move down this continuum from just giving information to facilitating critical thinking and problem solving skills and giving students the resources and skills that they need to make their own decisions about complex issues and take action. So we often say that we're teaching how to think, not what to think. It is not our job to tell students what action they should take, but rather to give them the skills and resources they need to be able to understand complex issues and move towards solutions. And again, a lot of that stems from the fact that with most environmental issues, we call them wicked problems because there often isn't one right answer or one easy solution to the problem. And so it's important that we're looking at all aspects of the issue, not just from an environmental standpoint, but from an economic standpoint, from a community standpoint, and all the other values and attitudes and behaviors that factor into those issues. So that's kind of what we're doing in our field and trying to work towards. So a little bit about KAEE in general. Again, we're that backbone organization for environmental education in Kentucky, but there is a similar organization in every state. So many of the states do what we call EE Credentials, which is a micro-credentialing program where you can take online courses on specific topics to get you deeper understanding of different aspects of things from foundations in environmental ed, teaching skills, down to the sciencey courses like Appalachian Mountain Ecology or water quality, those kind of things. So there's a number of different courses available. We also manage several different curriculum programs. So these are curriculum guides that educators can get trained in to use with their students. And Project Learning Tree is really focused on forestry. Project Wild is on, fish and wildlife and conservation. Leopold is on Aldo Leopold's land ethic. We have ones on waste and water and all kinds of stuff here. Each of these has different guides attached, and those are everything from early childhood guides up to high school guides that you can do with your students, whether that's science, language arts, they're interdisciplinary, math, lots of different options here. We run that program through a facilitator network. So we have facilitators all over who are trained. It's a train the trainer model. So we train these facilitators to go out and lead workshops for educators. So educators that are looking for a workshop can reach out to a facilitator in their area and ask about getting a training done. We also do an outdoor learning symposium every year. Most recently, we did this last May, and we usually work in partnership with a school district, and we are basically working to we bring that to a different school district each year for teachers to learn more about taking their students outside, and basically just a better understanding of that you don't need a state-of-the-art outdoor classroom to take your students outside and engage in outdoor learning, and that you can use the environment as a context for teaching any subject area. And so we go over different ways of doing that, tips and tricks. We share from other educators, classroom teachers, share out what they're doing in their schools and how they've done that effectively, how they manage behaviors and stuff like that. We also have a higher education network for anyone that's doing higher ed work, staff or faculty at higher ed institutions, colleges, and universities that we bring together twice a year and that's across disciplines, not just environmental ed, but we have early childhood, recreation, biology, wildlife, forestry, education. We bring all these folks together just so that we can all learn from each other and hear what we're each doing at our own institutions. We've done collaborative grant projects and things like that. All kinds of great ideas come out of that network. So that's awesome. And then most recently, we started doing these Green Career Summits. We hosted our first one last summer at Kentucky State University, and we brought around 200 students out to the university to learn about different green career opportunities. So they learned about working in solar, they learned about drones, they learned about water, they learned about waste, electric vehicles, all kinds of great stuff, and what different jobs were out there that they might be interested in. Our biggest event that we're most known for is our annual conference. And so we do have an annual conference every year that brings educators together from across the state. And I would say that almost every environmental education backbone organization has an annual conference in their state where they do this as well. So that's a great opportunity to bring those educators together and learn what they're all working on. And then I just briefly wanted to touch on some of the research we're doing. So part of my job is also working with the Southeastern Environmental Education Alliance. And I want to share that, we're doing a lot of really great data collection right now to better understand the field. And I share this because I know not everyone here is in Kentucky or the Southeast, but there is great work happening in other regions as well. I've been working with the folks in the Midwest and the folks in the Plains and California and Colorado and Indiana. And there's a lot of states that are collecting the same data so that we can compare data nationally to better understand gaps in our field. And this in itself is an hour-long presentation, but I just want to share some of the things that you can learn from this. One is that we have these dashboards that you can use to really dig into if you're looking to say, I want to find other people that are doing air quality work in my state that are working with, elementary age students. You can filter this dashboard by all of those different things and find specific organizations doing that work. We also have one for schools where you can dig into specific challenges and things that schools are dealing with. So for example, if you want to know what is the biggest barrier to high school teachers to getting students outside, you can filter this by high schools in specific states and look at what those barriers are. So those dashboards are a really great tool if you are looking to better understand different aspects of the field. You can use them to understand things like we've used it to understand where we have gaps in service areas. So we can see just in our state that most of the service providers are not in the areas that show dark blue on this map, which are our areas with the highest social vulnerability index and the lowest income. So we can kind of see where we have gaps and where we really need to focus efforts in our work. We can see who's the audiences that are being most often served. So we know that most of our programming is going towards K-5 students, and we really want to see that happening from early childhood all the way through high school and into adulthood. And so how can we make sure that we have this pathway of learning that's happening for all ages and not just this one thing that they did one time in 4th grade? So that's something that we have learned from this. We were able to better understand, how likely classroom teachers are to integrate outdoor learning into their instruction. And we know from our research that almost all of them are either already doing this or they're interested and they just need more support. So most teachers are really open to this idea of incorporating more outdoor learning. They just need our support in how best to do that. We know that, if we looked at things like field trips, we know that the biggest barriers to field trips are the costs and of the site fees and the transportation and things like that. So that's a way that we can work with our partners to try to address that. So if we have folks that are leading field trips or interested in bringing field school groups to their site, we can share this data with them so that they know that this is a way that they can get more schools. If they can find a way to address that need, we can help with that. We also looked at what terms are being used and whether the terms that schools are using are the same terms that the environmental education providers, the nature centers and zoos and aquariums and all of those are using, so that we can make sure that we're using the same language to talk to each other. And then we looked at, things like, is this something, excuse me, is this something that schools think of as interdisciplinary? And our finding was that most of them see environmental education as science, or as that thing they do on Earth Day. And so, only 20% see this as interdisciplinary. So that's something we want to work towards. We want to see that as something that we are hoping that schools can see how we can make this an interdisciplinary way of teaching, not a thing that we're teaching, but a way of how we teach, using the environment as a context to teach any topic area. So from this research, we've created a number of resources, and I know I'm out of time, so I'll just share briefly that you can check out our website to learn more about those. You can play with those dashboards and those maps. There's a video there on the whole presentation that you can watch. We have created some different resources from that. One is an equitable pay and hiring guideline, because we found that folks in the field of environmental ed are often being paid less than comparable fields, and we want to address that gap before we draw more people to our sector. How to collect demographic information in an effective way, how to evaluate your programs and things like that more effectively. So all of those resources are on the website. And then I just want to share this last slide to say that a lot of the work we're doing too is just trying to raise awareness with funders about what these gaps and barriers are, so that they can focus their efforts to address the biggest needs in our field and in our communities. And so I share this graphic because it really shows where funding is going in the different regions. And it's, again, we see how many funders we have and who those funders are, and try to better reach out to them about the need for that funding and where that funding can have the biggest impact. And so one of the things that we do is host funders briefings to share some of the work, the research and data, so that they can better cater their funding to meet those needs. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we're doing. Again, I know that was very focused on just our region, but just want to reiterate that we have this network of backbone organizations in all the states that we're happy to connect you if you are looking to figure out who's doing similar work where you're at. And I'm going to turn it back over to the next person.
Thanks, Ashley. And just to quickly highlight a couple of those organizations, since I think we're doing pretty okay on time. So if you're not familiar, there is an organization called the North American Association for Environmental Education. And under that kind of big umbrella, each state has most states have an affiliate organization. So if you're in Ohio, it's the Environmental Education Council of Ohio. In Indiana, or I'm sorry, in Pennsylvania, it's the Pennsylvania Environmental Education Council, I think. Ashley, you could probably correct me on that, but moral of the story here is many of the states in the Ohio River Basin have these networks that you can tap into for resources and partnerships. So with that said, we are going to move on to our last speaker. It's Perry Thomas, and Perry will be presenting on green school programs and environmental action civics as exemplars of the EE continuum. And Perry is an aquatic ecologist and environmental educator. As program director with KAEE, She coordinates the Kentucky Green Schools program, supports a network of EE facilitators, and organizes KAEE's annual outdoor learning symposium. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Great to be here. I'll emphasize that I am going to provide an overview of the Kentucky Green Schools program as an example of a green school program. There are many green school programs across the US and beyond. And I'm also going to just talk briefly about a program provided by a group called Earth Force, which is named Environmental Action Civics. And we'll see how much time we have to talk about that, but I do want to introduce it briefly at the end. And we are going to leave about 10 minutes for Q&A, and we're on time, so this is looking good. So Ashley talked quite a bit about KAEE. Some of you may not be aware that there's also an organization in Kentucky called the Kentucky Environmental Education Council, which is essentially a state agency. And KAEE and KEEC collaborate on a lot of endeavors. One of those is this Kentucky Green Schools program. So historically, there were two separate green school programs in Kentucky that offered reciprocal recognition. There was the Kentucky Green and Healthy Schools, sponsored by KEEC, and Project Learning Tree Green Schools, supported by KEEE. Well, in 2023, we were fortunate to be able to merge these programs into the Kentucky Green Schools program. And that was really led by my predecessor, Catherine Bullock. So I've inherited a terrific program that I'm happy to talk with you about. So the big picture in this program, student green teams explore themed investigations to examine and collect data about school grounds, energy use, waste and recycling, water, and the overall environmental quality of their school. Based on their investigations, students take the lead in designing and implementing action projects to address environmental challenges and thereby improve their school environment for learning. Along the way, they do a lot of environmental education, and we wanted to underscore that the Kentucky Green Schools program and most green school programs do cover the full continuum of environmental education that Ashley mentioned. There's a wealth of research showing that green schools benefit students. We don't have time to review all those benefits here. There's a list on this slide, but we did want to highlight a good source of information, the resource hub maintained by the Children and Nature Network. And they are continually updating this hub. We encourage you to visit it and to sign up for at least their monthly newsletters in which they send out a summary of research from the past month. The Kentucky Green School investigations are free to teachers. The whole program is free to teachers who sign up. And there's one guide for each of the 5 themes: energy, school environment, that's the indoors, school site, the outdoor school grounds, and water. One key aspect of Kentucky Green Schools, as I mentioned briefly already, is that students take the lead in investigating issues. They brainstorm solutions to problems that they discover. They make decisions together. They find ways to implement actions, even if those are only small actions, to take steps to make a change in their school environment. And then they report their progress and they celebrate successes. Each investigation encourages green teams to reach out to community partners to support research and problem solving. In Kentucky, partners are often non-formal educators who are also trained as EE facilitators. These connections sometimes inspire teachers to pursue professional development in environmental education, often through workshops that are provided by the EE Facilitator Network. Here's a map of our green schools and community partners. We note that the Thomas More Biological Field Station is the most recent addition to our community partner network, thanks to Chris Lawrence of Orba. Today, we'll take just a quick look at the water investigation as an example. All the investigations have the same standard table of contents: an introduction, teacher guide, investigation worksheets, and suggestions for recognition, steps to take to receive recognition. One question a green team might consider related to water is, why is learning about watersheds and water practices important for my school community? That's a question that was addressed by Mason County High School students. Their green team focused on their local watershed, and they were challenged by the Kentucky Division of Water to develop a monitoring plan for their local creek. Some of you may recognize Mahtab Bagherzadeh here, the former Licking River Basin coordinator. She's now working with the National Wildlife Federation. In a video, she explained to the students that stream monitoring could inform a watershed management plan. And that was an important step toward protecting their local streams and sources of drinking water. So the team developed their plan, a monitoring plan, using methods from Kentucky Watershed Watch, such as macroinvertebrate community analysis. Later, they toured their local drinking water treatment and wastewater treatment facilities. And they gave presentations about how best management practices in the watershed could improve water quality and overall stream health. Typically, a green team like the one I just described will take a full semester or a whole school year to fully complete an investigation. When they do, they apply for recognition starting with the green level. A school that completes all 5 investigations qualifies for gold level, and then can become a model green school. Model schools mentor others. And so in that way, we have a ripple effect created in the green schools. And we do hope that more of the students involved in the ripple effects photo contests will also be part of green school communities, and that those two projects will inform each other in the future. If you're interested in hearing more about the work that Mason County High School students did in their watershed study, they are going to join us for our Wild Wednesday webinar next week, January 29th. Note that it's 3:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern. And there's information on our website about how to sign up for that. We wanted to just briefly mention that there's a parallel program in Ohio called Wild Schools Sites. The Wild School Sites are similar to green schools, but focus on improving wildlife habitat in school communities. For those of you familiar with Project Wild or Aquatic Wild, this is an extension of those curriculum programs. Finally, as I mentioned, we want to call your attention to a parallel program sponsored by EarthForce. Environmental Action Civics follows the environmental education continuum with an emphasis, a focus on democratic process. So there's additional support for the green teams in learning to collaborate, work with each other, reach out to community members. For example, a green team in Colorado decided to investigate why their school's track was cracked and hard to maintain. It was just never right from the start, and it was getting worse as they had an increase in the number of 100-year flood events there. They also discovered that beneath the track there was an impermeable shale surface. So water just wasn't escaping and is standing there. And of course, they had freeze-thaw problems in the winter. So the students reached out eventually to the Mile High Flood District, their local stormwater utility, for assistance in solving the problem. And the district undertook major improvements identified by the students and supported by the students. So the track is being repaired, and they've addressed the fundamental cause of the problems with the track, and they're also working to maintain, together with community members, to maintain a park southwest of their sports field to create a more aesthetic garden there, more aesthetically pleasing, and further mitigate the impact of flooding through green infrastructure. Throughout their process, they use research-based consensus decision-making to plan each step. And so we want to emphasize you're welcome to reach out to any of us after this webinar with follow-up questions, but we still have time for Q&A, and we are going to open it up. I'll turn it over to Nick to moderate that.
Thanks so much. All right, so like Perry said, we are now going to take some time for any questions that any of you all have. You can either type your question in the chat and I can read it for you, or if you would prefer to ask it out loud, I just ask that you put a question mark in the chat so I can call on you. That way we're not having too many people try to unmute all at the same time. That way we can try to make sure everyone's questions get answered. So I'll give it a moment just in case. I have one myself to ask, if not. Jen.
Thank you. I want to thank all the presenters. It was really a bunch of great information, and the similar programs to the other states was very helpful too. So thank you for sharing. I just have kind of a general question about environmental education and STEM and STEAM. And I saw Ashley had a slide up there to kind of talk to that in terms of terms that people use. And I just wanted to hear from the presenters, what fundamentally do you see those being different, or is there key aspects of STEM, STEAM versus environmental education?
I'll take a stab at this. One thing that I see different from environmental education is more just that it's more than a topic area that we're teaching. So we see it as a way of teaching. So whereas you're talking about science, you've got technology, you've got engineering, arts, mathematics, those are all different subject areas that we want to make sure students are taught. And environmental education goes very well with STEAM. But the other piece that I think is different is that we're not just teaching environmental science. Environmental education is a way that we can teach any subject area across disciplines by using the environment around us as a context. So I think that's the main difference I see there, although I think STEAM and environmental education go very well together because we can teach any subject area in STEAM using environmental education.
Mm-hmm. I have seen that shift in STEM or STEAM being disciplines versus pedagogy, and really shifting it over to inquiry-based, place-based learning, project-based learning, and using the design cycle theory and thinking when you're solving those problems in STEAM, STEM. And it sounds like similar process with environmental education. It's because when I heard your presentation, it seems very similar. In Ohio, we have STEM designated schools or STEAM designated schools, and that's really working at a school culture shift.
Yeah.
And teaching teachers and children that design cycle process when we're solving problems and critical thinking.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thanks, Jen. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat yet, so this is a very large question, but considering this is the ORBA Ohio River discussion series, I wanted to know what the three of you thought as far as how would you describe the state of environmental education in the Ohio River Basin as a whole?
Does someone else want to?
I was going to say, I'm deferring to the two of you.
Okay. Do you want me to talk, Perry? I don't know.
You go ahead, Ashley, and I'll
Okay.
follow up.
I don't know that I can speak specifically to the Ohio River Basin, but I can speak to the national state. I would say that I would say there's still so much work to do in environmental education that needs to happen. We would still like to see um, we would still like to see it as a way that we're teaching in every school in America. I will say that it's the strongest I've ever seen it. I've been in this field for 20 years, and I would say that we're seeing more momentum happening nationally than I've ever seen in my time here. I think that there's a lot of great momentum and a lot of rising interest in the field of environmental education, in green jobs, in, how we make schools and communities more sustainable and all that great work. So I would say that and then I would say the folks doing the work in the field, those backbone organizations like KAEE, are have the most momentum I've ever seen as well. We're seeing a lot of growth in this field and a lot of funders that are, suddenly realizing the importance of the work that's happening and really interested in funding that and making those things happen. Really seeing a lot of excitement in schools and students and communities towards that. So I'm hopeful. I think we still have a lot of work to do, but it's been really it's given me a lot of hope to see the work that is happening nationwide.
And I'll just add that I come from the science education world, STEM world, as a formal educator in middle school, high school, and college. And I have to admit, I was starting to lose hope as a STEM educator myself. And moving into the broader environmental education community, being able to integrate the arts, English and language arts, social studies, into the teaching of the same kinds of subjects has brought me great joy. And collaborating with partners in the Ripple Effects, the photographers, has given me a whole new perspective on the environment. So that's my perspective on the Ohio River Basin environmental education world. I'll turn it over to Mary.
I guess if I were a statistician, I would say it's okay, because there are some remarkable things that are happening and then some ways in which I'm really discouraged. So on average, it's all right, but I would rather focus on the really extraordinary things. And I think, holding up like the projects that KAE is doing and letting people see those as examples for teachers out in the schools, or looking at, these other international projects that we've identified and having people be able to see those on Ripple Effects International. I think there's some just extraordinary things going on that are really exciting, like this Morecambe Bay curriculum, and I'll post something to, I'll try to get it in the chat, and if not, we can share it. They've brought teachers and researchers together to develop curriculum in a way that I think is just extraordinary. And Perry knows that my sister runs an organization in Vermont called Four Winds Nature Institute that I think is just doing amazing work about outdoor education. So I think the more we can hold up these extraordinary examples of really exciting, creative, engaging work that's going on, the more we can continue to move the needle toward sort of a positive direction on that.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. It's always great to just hear people's bigger thoughts, because I agree with you. Sometimes our work can be discouraging. A lot of the time we don't get to see the end result of the work in environmental education, because the result in many cases is 10 years in the future. So it is always good to keep those things in mind to help us keep moving forward. At the moment, I'm not seeing any other questions. So again, we'll stay here for just a few more minutes just in case there are any. But I do want to take just another opportunity here. Give me just a second, sorry. Just wanted to take one more opportunity to remind everyone about next month's discussion series on February 19th at noon, where we will be discussing water and trees.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
If I could ask another question or throw out another topic here, just I think each of you highlighted kind of your intersection with higher ed. If there are any more details or in-depth things that you are working on or needing to share out or need to share with institutions, that is one of the ways that the Orba Kid Group can help. We have institutions that are part of our working group, and I'd be happy to share that. I know that each of us that are part of Orba, that are in higher ed, have some of our key projects we're doing, but I think each of you had mentioned kind of, some of those collaborations and partnerships that you're doing with higher ed.
Yeah, we've got a project now that we're just starting, an NSF-funded project out in Eastern Kentucky, looking at trying to develop community knowledge and about flood monitoring and flood response in communities that have been really affected by flooding in the past couple of years. And part of it is an educational component. So we're trying to do middle school education around flood risk and also working on workforce development. And, some pro AE out there. So, we're trying to take the resources that we have in higher education out in the community to make a difference.
Terrific.
And I'll put it in the chat, but I'd just love to extend an invite to anyone that is working in higher ed as faculty or staff to join the EEHIN, which is our higher education network that I mentioned in my presentation. It's really just a network of folks that come together a couple times a year to share, and we have a listserv in case folks have things that they want to put out there. If they're working on a grant project or, looking for other institutions to partner with. We're really just there to hold the space to bring that network together. So
Ashley, is that, excuse me, is that just the Southeast region?
that one is just Kentucky. But we, we don't have, there is a higher ed network that NAAEE is managing though, across the nation, that my counterpart Brittany, our deputy director, she's part of that. So if folks are interested in getting more involved in that, I'm happy to put you in touch with that group too.
Yeah.
And I'll just give another shout out, this one to the Green Umbrella Regional Climate Collaborative. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. I'm going to put the link in the chat. That's actually the organization through which Chris Lorenz and I connected, and why he signed on to be a community partner with the Green Schools program. So great work for them, and their approach is consistent with the environmental education continuum.
And another thing to quickly highlight, kind of parallel to Green Umbrella, the Greater Cincinnati Environmental Educators is a group in the Greater Cincinnati area that meets to hold a couple of events throughout the year, but one of them is coming up next month, and that is their Conservation Career Fair. So if you're in the Greater Cincinnati area, we actually have employers and people coming all the way from as far as Columbus. So it's a pretty big range, but that is a career fair that is solely focused on trying to bridge the gap between people looking for all of these jobs and those employers. So it does range from places like the Army Corps and the EPA, all the way over to like Cincinnati Zoo, Newport Aquarium. So it is a very wide range of organizations. So we are still, we do still have openings for employers if you're interested in attending and have any jobs you need to promote. And also, if you know anyone who is looking for a job, feel free to send them on over to the career fair. So I'll put that link in the chat as well. But with that, is there anything else from our speakers that you would like to cover or anything?
Thank you all for organizing. I appreciate being part of it.
Nick, one last thing.
Yes.
There's so many great notes and resources in this chat. Is there a way you can export that and we could share it out with the recording?
Adam, I think the chat gets downloaded automatically. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll send it to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a great rest of your week, and we hope to see you on February 19th.
Thank you.